They're gonna catch me checklist. That's a bad bet. Ain't gonna catch me without a roof over my head, verifying everything. That's a bad bet if the bag's checkless. About to burn back to back, flipping that G when that Jenny duh hits. That's the race to 250 in the world, and you chose to sleep. That's a bad bet if you wake up checkless. Normal people without bags, yet they need status. Running head first with the VV check thirst. Never heard of a hearse, but they connecting the dots. One check, Timmy, don't at me for what's stimmy. It's that new jack. Fact, it's that new check. Jack,
let's go. Welcome back to the Never Fade podcast. Oh boy, that was an original track by the one and only, our co-host here, Good Month ETH. Was that you, playa? You were inspired. Tell us what's going on here.
That's right, man. I mean, I think, you know it's real when the lyrics can't stop coming up in your head, and like the checks were hitting God mode, and they're about to go to 1 ETH. They were at 0.8 when I recorded it, and just putting out that checks vibe. Because I just kept saying to myself, like, if you wake up checklist, that's a bad bet, and that's just what I built off of, and that's the message there.
This is what he tells himself right before he sweeps, right before he goes in with the whale sweep on the checks. Don't wake up checklist. That's a bad bet. Oh, man. Welcome back to the EP11, the first 10 episodes of the Never Fade podcast. We went through various topics in the NFT industry. We talked about some of the top projects, including DeGods, including BAYC. We took a dive down into the bowels of the yacht club with the Dookie Dash game. We had a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys learned some things and we're vibing with what we're trying to share out here. We really appreciate you. I'm at facts_ETH on Twitter with my co-host at GoodMonthETH. And we're bringing in a special guest today because we're going to be talking about a new topic, and that's Jack Butcher's checks. So who's joining us today, Good?
Yeah, we're with Mitch Morales today. We're going deep into Jack Butcher, aka Jack Buchecki, and we're taking a look at these VV checks. And Mitch Morales is part of the Good Month Labs team. He runs biz dev and operations for KCAP specifically and Good Month Labs as a whole. So excited to have him on. And the reason why we're talking to Mitch about checks is because Mitch is the one who really started. I mean, he served up the red pill for me in a nice little petri dish. Like, I saw the checks minting over the holidays, 0.006. I understood that, they were kind of a play off what Elon was doing with the verified checks. I actually think that, like, seeing the Jack Butcher checks pushed me to get verified on Twitter. Like, I was really not wanting to pay the $8.99 for a check, but my timeline went to just absolute crap. And I saw these Jack Butcher mints going on, and I was like, you know what? Like, people are minting these checks. I should probably just have a check. So it was like a weird thing for me that Jack Butcher's mint actually pushed me to go get a Twitter check, even though they're like related, but that's not the purpose. I want to be clear that. But then I was talking to Mitch, and Mitch was so bullish. Like, he was so bullish on checks before they cracked 0.01. And before we go to Mitch to hear from him, like, you have to kind of understand how metas work and build like this to be bullish before anyone can even begin to make a case for a project. That's a rare spot to be in. Like, you either are calling a shot at the perfect time, or you're always saying everything's going to go up at every single point, and you've sprayed so many bullets that eventually one hits. But Mitch is a very, like, stoic type, and we'll hear from him. So he doesn't get really, like, jacked up on something until it's proven. But he was pretty jacked up on this, and it piqued my interest enough to go deep on it. And we'll have to hear from Mitch on this, but I'm pretty sure I didn't give him much pushback on his bullishness. I think I have like maybe 2 questions, but I was pretty much sold in like a 30-minute conversation from there. And from that point forward,
But before we go to Mitch, I also want to credit him because I swooped some checks just on some alpha that I was getting from him. And this is part of the fun that we have over at A Good Month Labs. Even our producer, Hazy B at Hazel B Jordan on Twitter, he's in the checks game. So we get to have a lot of fun when the whole team wins here. And we are attributing that to some of Mitch's alpha. So before we go to him, though, let's talk a little bit about, this. Mitch is one of the early people to the team here at Good Month Labs. So tell us, Good, like, why Mitch? What about Mitch drove you to want to work with him?
yeah, I mean, I think that he's a seasoned builder. So he's a seasoned builder in the early stage from the biz dev and ops side. I originally got intro to him through Right Click Save Ventures, which an advisor and an investor in. He runs Right Click Save Ventures as well, so we could talk a little bit about that. But you just kind of started to understand that the ethos align. So he has very much of a Web3 ethos. He is really kind of motivated for the altruistic side of Web3, and you marry that with business and good alpha calls, and that's all it takes to get into the Good Month Labs pocket. Also, fun fact about the checks alpha: it didn't happen in the dedicated alpha channel that we have a rotating reminder, NFA, NFA, DYOR, DYOR every day. This alpha actually turned our product design channel into a trading alpha, which I think adds to the meta. So without any more comments from us, the monkeys hosting this thing, we'll throw it over to Mitch. Mitch, start us off with how you started with Right Click Save Ventures and got into the Good Month Labs Zerk portal.
Yeah, thanks guys. GM, thanks for having me. Right Click Save Ventures, it's a Web3 product studio and investment fund. As you can guess by the name, predominantly focused on NFTs. And something we look at pretty heavily, especially in this bear market, is new utilities, and as you guys mentioned earlier, kind of new metas. The holiday period, I think, it's nothing new, like these artists releasing open edition collections, but something really started to catch a gear there. You saw people minting for free or minting for super low cost. And that's when I started to take note. And when I saw the tweet from Jack, happened to follow him, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but happened to follow him and rolled the dice on a handful of checks at the mint price of 0.0066, I think, which was essentially approximate to the $8 cost of monthly cost of a verified check on Twitter. And the way that he talked about it in real time over that 24-hour period just really made my wheels start to spin, bringing in concepts around, the idea of chasing status, the way that they sort of talked about the idea for the, starting to think about a burn mechanism. Just really kind of resonated with me in a way that was different than traditional art, NFTs, PFP NFTs, some of these kind of more like gaming or other utility enabled NFTs, like just seemed kind of different. So, one of those unfortunate situations where you wish you would have been a little bit higher conviction and played it a little bit heavier handed. I spent most of my time just shilling it to friends and shilling it in every channel that I was in, and actually just happy to see people respond and kind of come back into the space because of it. I shared a screen cap yesterday with a friend that he was like, checks are making me feel something again. Just watching it being built in public and seeing the whole market kind of like unite around it a little bit is super cool. And it's, you know, back to early 2021 vibes, summer 2021 vibes again, where, you know, maybe we're not up only everywhere else, although we're in a little bit of a nice period. It's cool to see. And then there's been all these derivative projects kicked off as well. Most of them, you know, not having nearly the success, but it's allowing creators to do new things, try new, you know, integrations and implementations of technology, you know, burn mechanisms and gamification within these communities is something I think that can be organic and can provide for real growth. So that's kind of the story there.
I'll tell you what, nothing will make you feel something in the NFT space more than a 200x plus. You know, these things minted just a couple weeks ago at 0.0066, and they're trading at 1.5 Ethereum. I can't believe it. You know, now the crazy part about it is everybody in the whole space is just thinking through this concept of, man, if I would have just put in a few ETH at mint, I'd be up $1 million right now, you know, and that's part of.
Ain't that how it always goes? Ain't that how it always is? If only I put a few more quarters in the Ginny Wealth arcade machine, I could be backpack ready, set, and go. Oh, you love to see it.
Yeah. So you know, it's always a double-edged sword. You win and you lose at the same time. The key, I think, right now is that you hold on and you see where we're going here, and who's to say where we're going. But what we do know is that we still haven't gotten news on when the actual burn mechanism of the checks is going to start, and we're going to get into that. We're going to do a deep dive into the checks, but before we do, I think it's best to get a little bit more background here on Jack Butcher and, you know, what his body of work leading up to this particular collection. So, Mitch, can you tell us a little bit about Jack Butcher and, you know, kind of what he's been up to before the checks?
Yeah, Mitch, why don't you tell us about his body of work before he caught a body on the block? You know what I'm saying?
For sure. Well, he's been around. Like, I mean, I think like most like forward thinkers and creatives are drawn to the space inherently, and so it's not like this is his first project by any means. You can go back, and a lot of his like previous works, like the Merge VV, are flying. It's just really beautiful, clean, simple art, and that's why I was drawn to him a few years ago. I think started either following his blog or getting his on his email list. Eventually got onto Twitter, which was what allowed me to see the mint happening in kind of real time. But yeah, just the way that he takes these like complex concepts and ideas and whittles them down into these like elegant, you know, usually black on white, or white on black visuals. I mean, visualize value. It's about improving yourself, improving your business, improving the things in your life. And I mean, like if anybody wants a really good background kind of for their Chrome and as an extension, I would definitely say hit up the Visualize Value extension. It's like a little daily dose of inspiration every time you pop open a new window. But yeah, you know, like the way that I think he's taking this idea of the original Twitter status conversation and the drama around that with Elon kind of coming in and taking the reins of Twitter, and then looking to some of his network, you know, some of the folks on the team that have helped him kind of craft out and are in the process of like the final steps, I think, of building out this burn mechanism and dealing with ideas of provenance, which is super huge in like the traditional art world. I think it's really like maybe going to push boundaries and take you know, traditional art and NFT art to the next level. I think it's maybe the catalyst for a bigger adoption, and that's what we're all here for, right? Like we're here to make the space better and make the world better by allowing more people to participate in it, participate in some generational wealth opportunities, and just have fun while doing it.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things about Jack is, that you mentioned to me early on was how you really enjoyed his calm way of thinking. And the minute you said that to me, I realized, like, right over my shoulder is a visualized value framed graphic. It basically, if you can see it, the upside down triangle says a charlatan, the right side up pyramid says martyr, and the full cube looks like a stick of butter called the hustler. And it's, up at the top is talk, and up at the bottom is work. And so that was actually given to me by David, who heads up our engineering, years ago. And it made me take a step back and think, when you said that you like this calm thought process, I was like, you know what? Ain't that what we really need in this space right now? Like, isn't that something that we need to kind of use as a floor to boost off of, as we've gone through, like, kind of the bearish year that we went through in 2022? And so I really decided at that point that, like, I'm going to buy into Root. Like, I'm going to buy into Root, this Jack Butcher guy, on, because you see so many names come up in the space, and you see people put those names on their shoulders, and you see them put them on their shoulders for financial gain, for selfish financial gain. And I really felt like I wanted to put Jack Butcher on my shoulders for a global space gain of being a little bit more calm and a little bit more thoughtful. So can you tell me a little bit more about, like, visualized value, and how you feel like the DNA of visualized value is woven into the Checks project?
He's really big on process. He has these like training courses for creative process and for building businesses. A lot, hugely successful and well regarded, and it's really, he's using that same methodology and that transparency throughout this process. Like, if you go to his Twitter page, you can see what's happening in real time, whether it's putting up some polls or socializing ideas, and what they're thinking and what they're going to be doing next, and kind of teasing out in real time, pretty much, like, what the burn mechanism is going to look like, how provenance is going to play into this. And it's just, as somebody that is passionate about building in the space, and in a time where that is kind of the like mantra, it just really resonates with a lot of people that are doing that and are kind of going through that plight. And I think it's an inspiration to a lot of folks. Of course, there's a lot of speculation, and people are trying to buy that check dip at 1.3, and like, where is it going to run to? Like, I mean, that's part of the fun of this space too, is like every opportunity, there's these like multiple sides to it. But yeah, I mean, it's just really amazing to see, and I think, like, I hope that will bring out a desire for the market to want to highlight and reward other builders that are doing things for the right reason, that are pushing boundaries, and not just dropping another PFP project because they want a cash grab, right? Like, I think this is about much more than that. Obviously, though, he's getting rewarded, and he should be, right? Like, if you provide utility, if you provide value to the world, I mean, it should reciprocate. And I think, we're definitely seeing it, number one, on OpenSea. Like, there's a good amount of royalties and upside coming their way too.
Yeah. So as builders in the space, you guys are faced with like a daily predicament of, how do you use your time? How do you get the most value from your time? And this is a space that has a lot of noise. This is a space that we have all kinds of things coming at us from all different angles. In the NFT space, we've seen all kinds of rugs. We've seen scams. We've seen, people who are not authentic. We've also seen incredible work, incredible art, just leaps and bounds of activity on chain. But I think there is that need to kind of like simplify and distill into, what is your priority? How do you move forward in a way that's valuable for that day and for the days to follow? And I think that's what Jack really has established with his body of work with visualized value. He comes from a background in advertising, and advertising at its core is really about communication. How do you communicate a message to an audience that has impact and that also really like cuts through the noise and conveys a message in a space where there's so much content and there's so many other brands and there's so many other things. So my assumption is that he's taken those learnings from his work in advertising, and he's realized like when you simplify and you make effective and impactful communications, that's the key. And in his courses, I looked through the visualized value courses, that's really, what's being offered there is like a simplistic view of how to communicate value. And so when we go to these checks, it's pretty interesting, right? And one of the reasons it's so popular is because of what's happened on Twitter, as you talked about, Mitch, with Elon taking over and trying to monetize, and then basically requiring that people pay that $8 or what have you in order to be verified, and people's kind of like need for verification and need for confirmation. And it's really interesting. It's like a chase for the check. And there's also like a bigger meaning, which is native to Web3 and native to the blockchain, which is that really at the end of the day, the blockchain is about verification. The blockchain is about decentralized verification. Again, like a play on that check. And so I think these like two simple but powerful meanings behind this is why this has essentially gone viral. That's what's happened here is this particular art, it's gone viral. And when you pair that with the burn mechanic, it creates also this kind of like interesting gamification of rarity. And so we're going to get into that in terms of the burn mechanic. So why don't we go through that, and then we'll get back to Good about a recent purchase that he made and get his thoughts on that. So Hazy B, if you could pull up for us the actual like I guess burn map, I want to call it, as to like what to expect. Because
and why and while you're pulling that up, Hazy, I think something to call out really is like the big miss on this for people who missed this early on is if you take this project literal, it falls flat because it feels weird. It feels like there's no utility behind it. It feels like it's a concept that you can't grasp. It's conceptual, and it's much like highbrow art. When highbrow art lands on people, you hear it all the time. You hear more times about people talking about Jackson Pollock's method of painting laughed at than you hear about the people who really appreciate it. You hear about the jokes of the Rothko circles before you hear about the people that can't stop looking at Rothko circles. You hear these literal jokes before you hear the evoked emotions come out from them. And I think, it's something to really understand and take note of, that this burn mechanism process is a very literal process for crypto natives. They understand it. They've done it. They've played burn. They've played collections that have been motivated by burn dynamics. But it's the underlying tones, the concepts, the person behind it, the fact that a designer can be so bullish with their visuals in a visual economy state that you get this intrigue of burn mechanism. So I want Mitch to walk us through that, but I wanted to kind of set the stage there. This is nothing new. The burn mechanisms have existed, but when you pair burn mechanisms with a concept of highbrow art that's hitting with people, it's like CryptoPunks meets Bored Ape together. Mitch, walk us through the burn map. Checkonomics.
Checkonomics.
Punks meets Bored Apes. Yeah, no, I mean, just briefly before getting into it, like I've kind of been in my own mental model, and what I'm trying to like assess the value of what these checks are. I'm looking at the market cap for actually some of the more like well-known art projects, like Fidenza for one, and look and just then kind of doing a proxy for that onto the total amount of checks and the ultimate amount of possible single checks, which we can get into. So yeah, like I definitely think you can take some clues in terms of like what the market.
Real quick on that Fidenza comparison, can you equate in this scenario, if you're looking at this as a future Fidenza, do we think we'll get to a state where, in your opinion, art blocks can be equivalent with Jack Butcher and checks is proportionally relative to Fidenzas? If it gets to that level, is that kind of what we're looking at with categories and nested categories here?
Yeah, I mean it's just one comp, but you're saying like basically one of the top like most blue chip digital art projects that there is, and the amount of value that the market has associated with it. So I mean that's pretty crude, right? That's just taking like floor price times total availability. So I think it's I think when you look at that metric, there's 100,000 ETH, 150,000 ETH, somewhere in that range. Like I think you could argue that the total market cap of Fidenza is more than that. But yeah, I'm just trying to give an example of how I'm saying like, okay, right now the floor price of a check is worth, and kind of pre-burn check, right, is worth right around 1.5 ETH. And eventually there's going to be this consolidation, and there's going to be this gamification to where people can burn all the way down to the single check. And so whether I'm dividing that ultimate market cap estimate by 16,000 or whether I'm dividing it by 250, like that's about how I'm kind of doing that. Like, okay, where are my price targets for the project right now, and kind of how am I strategizing about where to potentially acquire more or where to take some profits. Ultimately, I'm still a little bit of a degen trader at heart as well, so I can't really look at it without seeing it through that lens. But yeah, just to briefly get into it. So and this whole process was not preset. They came, Jack and some of his close network came up with this after the mint was closed. There happened to be 80 checks on the original piece of art, and so they wanted to do something that kind of commemorated that 80 number. Ultimately, they decided that 80 was a semi-perfect number, and so they would look at those divisors and do something along those lines of trying to create a burn mechanism that followed loosely around that path. So as you can see here, you start at 80, and the burn mechanism is pretty simple. It's just you take 2 of each piece, and you can then burn it down into a piece that's more rare and has fewer checks. So you go from 80 to 40 to 20 to 10 to 5 to 4 to 1, the single check. Hypothetically, it would be possible to get to that black check, and we can go into that later. But that's kind of that seems pretty difficult to imagine happening with so many people wanting to get in and own various pieces along the line.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to reiterate for everybody that's listening, at this point, what's available on the market is the 80 check piece. Once the burn mechanism is activated, there'll be an option to take two of those and burn them down into a 40 check piece, and then two of the 40s down to a 20, and so on. And like Mitch said, all the way down to a single colored check, which right now is a yellow check, but our producer Hazy B, he mentioned to me the other day that he thinks that that could be different colors. So if it's different colors, that might add additional rarities. So it's 64 pieces to get down to a single check. Then there's the Grail black check, which would require 64 single checks. So I'm doing the math here. That's 4,096 would need to get burned of the floor checks to get all the way down to a single Grail black check. And, that's at this time, looking at the holder count on Etherscan, last time I checked, the most in a one single wallet was like 500 range. So we'll see. It's going to take quite an effort for somebody to get all the way down to that single black check. And at the current floor price, 4,096 times about 1.5 ETH, it's 6,100 ETH. Where we're at today with Ethereum, that's almost $10 million. So, we'll see the floor price. It can, pull back. That's natural. Right now, it was kind of like peak hype. We'll see. There's a lot of flippers in this game. Maybe it'll go down. It'll come back up closer to the burn. We'll see. But that single Grail check currently costing millions of dollars. Do you think it's realistic for somebody in this space, or would it require like a collective effort, like maybe a DAO, to get to that place, Mitch?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the DAO angle. Definitely, like, Constitution DAO is an example of how people can pool a ton of money together and try to acquire something very rare. I personally thought it was probably impossible for how many folks were trying to accumulate to the single check, and then also at the same time how many people are just going to probably at least hold one of the original artwork, maybe not even burn at all. And yeah, I mean, we're kind of in somewhat rare territory here. It's really hard to forecast what's going to happen. So if I had to just like say yes or no, no, I don't think we ever see a black check.
Oh boy, Mitch thinks that no one's gonna pull off the black check, and now somebody's gonna have to do it. Somebody's gonna have to do it, because what we know is that there's these sneaky, quiet.
Yeah, prove me wrong, please.
Not me, but there's these sneaky, quiet whales with just these big bags of ETH, and I've seen some crazy stuff in this space. I've seen people spend millions of dollars on a golden skateboard. I've seen people spend millions of dollars on a Fidenza. So I'm definitely not ruling it out. But with that, maybe we can get into the mind of our own little internal whale here, and that's Good Month here. Good Month ETH, who yesterday sniped a very interesting check, which is check number 32, the serial number 32 check for 4.69 ETH. At the time, the floor was 1 ETH. He went over 4.5x the floor to snipe that. So far, it's looking like maybe it was a good decision. What was your thought process, Good?
Yeah, I mean, check 32. I'd really appreciate if everyone on Twitter could just call me out for making the dumbest move ever by buying that. I appreciate the FUD. Always makes things more valuable. So that's a little call to action there for the community. Outside of that, Provenance. Jack Butcher's bit by Provenance, and he has been talking about inheriting logic for serial numbers. As we know, in the ETH space, people have chased serial numbers for a really long time, and it's never panned out. It's never mattered. The only time I can really remember serial numbers panning out was with other deeds. 0 through 100 got you in the inner circle conceptually for what the other side is. And then the other thing is with nouns, having the first 0 through 100 serial on nouns is pretty powerful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're definitely playing this angle of, if people are going to invest and burn, that final, check that they're trying to burn down to, whether it's a single yellow check or possibly even a Grail black check, they're definitely going to want to pair that with a low serial number and inherit that low serial number throughout. So that makes a lot of sense. With that, I really like to, I really appreciate what you guys have brought to the table here with some intel on the checks and Jack Butcher. So before we kind of close out, Mitch, maybe if you could tell us, why did you decide to go halves with good on that Grail check, and also any closing thoughts for us here?
Yeah, I mean, 32 seemed really, really good. Like, that seemed like if this gets to where I think it'll be, and you have collectors and celebrities, athletes kind of coming in and wanting to put that single check on their wall, the number being associated with it would be really important, almost as important to the value and the provenance of it. And so, yeah, it just felt like, whether it's like the amount of ETH needed for a node, or the kind of 32 relevance to being, in computing storage, or even just like 32, being the number that certain athletes have worn. Like, it just felt like, in this particular time frame where people are consolidating, both just holding checks and then also trying to prepare for getting those good numbers, compared to like where the price of other single and double digit numbers were. Felt like a good flyer to make, and some kind of maybe some outsized return opportunity for this project at a stage where we've already seen it come up a couple 100x from mint price. Maybe you get some extra value because somebody really wants that number to consolidate around that burn process that they're trying to go through. So yeah, man, I mean, for a lot of reasons, I was going to say this and hopefully it sticks. For me, it's in the no fade zone, Jack Butcher in the checks. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been really fun to talk about it with you guys.
Love to see it. 32 is a magic number indeed. I learned a lot today. I'm excited for this burn mechanic and what's to follow, and also, learning more about Jack Butcher as we go. Hazy B, I'd really like to get that Jack track, that good put together on couch.
Verifying everything. That's a bad bet if the bag's checkless. About to burn back to back, flipping that G when that Jenny duh hits. That's the race to 250 in the world, and you chose to sleep. That's a bad bet if you wake up checkless. No more people without bags, yet they need status. Running head first with the VV check thirst. Never heard of a hearse, but they connect.